In this video, we're going to take a look at volume and why it's measured in cubic units, and we're also going to talk about the formula for volume and why it works. But before we go into that, I think it's important to note the difference between square units and cubic units, which is what volume is measured in. And as a really quick example, I have a rectangle here, and this rectangle is the dimensions of it measure 2 units by 4 units. Now, the area of this rectangle has to be measured in square units, and the reason for that is that when I go 4 units across by 2 units down, that becomes my length times my width. Although I can't see it in this actual rectangle, it's going to form 8 squares, and each square is going to be equal in size, which I have right here. So when I create that grid going with, in the formula for area of a rectangle is area equals length times width. When I say 4 units going one way by 2 units going the other way, that creates my 8 squares inside that rectangle. So the answer to this particular question would be area equals 8 square units. And I'd have to indicate square units in order for my answer to be correct. Volume is completely different, because with volume I'm not measuring the space inside of a rectangle, I'm measuring the amount of space that a box has inside of it. And in order to measure that, I'd be using unit cubes, or in this case a cube, and I'd want to figure out how many cubes could I fit inside my yellow box. So as you can see, I illustrated this particular box outline in yellow is 2 units by 4 units by 3 units, and you can see on the array that I created with cubes, it goes 2 cubes in one direction, and then it's going to go 4 cubes deep, and then there are 3 cubes high. That creates my length of 2, right there, 2 units, my width of 4 units, 4 units wide, and then my height of 3 units, or 3 units high. What really happens when I apply this formula is the first step I'm going to make. I could almost think of this formula as being more like this. The length and the width are almost in parentheses. They're like a group. I don't have to write it that way, but if I wanted to think of it that way, then what I'm really doing is I'm separating that base layer, okay? And I'm creating a layer of cubes that's 2 units wide in one direction by 4 units deep. And I can see visually that creates 8 cubes in that layer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's almost like my going back to this formula, 2 times 4 is 8. There's the 8, and then on the base layer, here's the 8. So 2 units by 4 units creates that base layer of 8. Now, the height of 3 has me stacking 3 of those layers. So I have 8 in the first layer. I could even type that out. I have 8 cubes. I have 8 cubes in the first layer. Then I would have another 8 cubes in that second layer, or that second stack. So there's another 8. And then finally, I'd have 8 more cubes in that third stack of cubes. So it's really like saying, when it's all done, 8 times 3, which would be 24. And the answer would be cubic units, or cubes. But in this case, I'll call each cube 1 cubic unit. And the reason why it's 1 cubic unit is that I started with one of these, and one of those is 1 cubic unit. It's 1 unit by 1 unit by 1 unit, forming what I like to call a unit cube. So 24 cubes. Now, the tricky part to this is I can't see all 24 cubes. In fact, if I go visually with what I can see, the 6 squares on this face, and then I can see 8 squares on the top, and I can see so many squares on the side. I can't actually see the cubes that are hidden. But if I unstack it and like I remove this top layer and bring it over here, now I can see the full 8 cubes in that second layer. So I can see the 8 cubes in my top layer. Then with this I can see the 8 cubes in my middle layer, and then separating that out I can see the 8 cubes in my base layer. So the formula becomes length times width, which in this case it would be 2 units times 4 units. That gives me my 8 units here. And then times the height, it's 3 units high. So when I really think of this formula, I kind of think of it as almost envisioning my volume as, you know, in this case it would be 3 separate layers. Layer 1 has 8 cubes, layer 2 has 8 cubes, and then layer 3 has 8 more cubes. And combined, when I bring them all together, that creates my 24 cubic units. And that's why volume is measured in cubic units, because I'm filling my box with unit cubes, and area is going to have to be measured then in square units like I showed in the first part of the video.